I'm Leah, co-founder and CEO of Tchek. Tchek is the leading AI and imaging solution for the automotive industry. We are being created to help the industry in terms of use and technology. And here, as of today, we wanted to give you a macro analysis of how to empower your remarketing strategy with AI imaging solutions. And as macro, I'll start from the very beginning on what is the start of image solution and AI imaging solution. And the start is from any device. So as Silvio said, it could be any camera or any picture or a smartphone from any location. It will be probably the same process of AI throughout the world, and from anyone. It could be a driver taking picture, an operator taking picture, or yourself taking one picture. That's the very key start, having a picture. And from a simple picture, then starts the whole journey. And about the journey, we've had a few comments on how to use AI into the journey. Quite often, we as the industry are asked to create new processes with AI. And that's around only 20% of what actually happens. What actually happens is how to empower your existing journey, your existing process with AI. AI, three major points is how to have more consistency, better quality, better timings, and sometimes it's just about how to empower your existing process about it. There are four cornerstones to keep in mind talking about AI-powered imaging solutions. You probably know all of them, and if you don't, that's still interesting to keep in mind. The first one is having data. Earlier in the panel this afternoon, we talked about the data as of powered data. Here it's about imaging data. You need images to work on. You need image treatments to have the right image to work on, so the right brightness and the right picture. And you need business logics. So it's simply, we're using what already exists in terms of human interpretation, and we're trying to implement that coding into business layers, business know-how, logics. And the last but not least, because it joined all of us today, it's data science. So we know that data science is just pushing the boundaries, and we know that as of today, AI has two main objectives. The first one is productivity, outperforming the capacity of human beings somehow. And the second one is AI is an interactive tool to make people talk to one another or to have an interpretation to share with one another. So that's the main key point of data science here. So now that we have those four cornerstones, it's about how we make life easier. And quite often, AI imaging systems and the solutions are represented as how to have better estimates. But there's a few steps that probably unknown, but have a very good impact on how to make life easier, like AI imaging solutions for image rendering. Image rendering is about how to be able to interpret the image to know if you have the right picture, you are close enough or not close enough, you have the right brightness, the image is not blurry, etc. This can be interpreted by AI, and it's easily implemented, and that's called image rendering for photo shoot process, or simply in your process for inspection. Then comes the second life easier process, which is damage checks. That's what we do as of course, human operators, and damage checks about recognizing the damage, recognizing its location, its severity if needed, and being able to do a comparison for in and out approval. And here comes the business checks I talked about earlier. Business checks, it's about probably from one person to another, one client to another that you have, you won't show the same results. And that's what we all do in a traditional, if I may, process. We don't show the same result depending on the process and depending on the client, and that can be coded. So business checks is about, for example, damage that you're going to show to one client and not going to show to another. It's also about how you're going to implement your process in terms of integration. And the last one, but not least, because it's the most well-known, it's repair estimates. Of course, this needs to have all the three other ones to be checked. Image rendering, damage check, and business checks. It's about how you're going to estimate from images the car. And it could be a flat rate estimate or go deeper into a specific estimation per part in the industry, different actors working different ways. And that's all we can do working with one another. And here comes, of course, those three main opportunities. Where lies the opportunities for AI to empower the processing and the process that you already have? The first one is an interesting one, is how probably the AI is going to do 80% of the traffic. It's going to accelerate 80% of the traffic. And it's still going to need, let's say, 20% of approval or validation of an operator. So it's still going to improve the whole process and have validation. And it's also interesting for cut process costs on how it's going to have an impact on pre-inspection, all the various processes that you mentioned, Silvio, pre-inspection, end of leave inspection, or if a driver is changing hands. Then comes the second one, reducing lead times. Reducing lead times takes many forms. The lead times begins at the valuation of a car. And at the valuation of a car, you have, of course, if the car is ready, is the picture, if the pictures are okay, then comes the interpretation of the car, the cost of repair of this car. This leads to reduce lead time. And the third step to reduce lead time is photo shooting. It can take many forms on how to improve these lead times. For example, how to automatize the hotspots that you manually add to each turntable that you have. These can be added by AI, and it comes as an output as a reduce of lead time. Then standardize quality. This is how can we have the same quality throughout all medias? How can we have the same quality throughout all the partners that we have? This is how you standardize quality with AI empowerment. The three opportunities that lies here are AI powered, empowered, and are also AI and human empowered remarketing process. And it can take many forms that you see or three. It can take the form of a scanner, of API working on images that you already have in your process with turntables or with other type of photo shooting that you might have. Or it can also be integrated in a few processes like Silvio, you mentioned, in the apps that are the many apps that are working in this market and that you probably have inside your own company. Do three main opportunities exist? And I think it's a good opportunity today to say that everyone knows AI will be part of all our process. It's how we're going to be able to empower the process that we already have. And this is why we wanted to have also a quick overview of the challenges to take into account when thinking about AI implementation. And the challenges that exist are the maturity of the technologies. There is a certain maturity of those technologies that are, for some recent, for some old, not old, but existing technologies. And it's a macro analysis, a world analysis to say that the maturity of the technology is at a certain point. Then it's also interesting to keep in mind that we can create a new process or empower existing process. And for that, we need to map existing process and keep in mind that those existing process have a reason to exist, and we need to see this process to see what are the opportunities to accelerate the movement with AI. And last but not least, probably the ultimate one, we are talking here about the technology or a few technologies, but probably what will make the difference in the few years to come, and everyone agrees, I know we've had a long talk about it, is people. People are going to take and bring that technology into the processes, into your company or your competitors. And change management is something we have to take into account when using technologies throughout the whole process. And this does not relate to only imaging solutions, but still is very important to take into account. And change management meaning time, relevance, and quality. As a conclusion, and for also a macro analysis, there are three main points very important to keep in mind about AI imaging solutions. The first one is AI imaging solution empowers quality. Yes, it can outperform human performance. The second point is consistency. With AI, it's an interpretation of the data, a technical one. And of course, there's a certain level of confidence of the AI, depending on two images, but there is a certain consistency. And the last, but again, not least, is how AI will accelerate the processes. So it's more about efficiency. AI helps efficiency. Well, thank you, John. I'll leave you from here.
Okay, thank you a lot. I had a question last week, someone asking me about what is now actually this artificial intelligence? What does it really do? So it was more a cry for help almost to how do we need to understand what this actually does? So, and how, I don't know if those systems, that was another one, are learning ongoingly. Are you able to explain it for us? Because I know it's very, very technical in almost simple terms.
Well, that's part also of how I say. So if you have a lot of data, then more or less you're going to labelize. So that's what we call labelize the data. So you're going to learn, make the group learn and the intelligence learn what exists in those images, so that they have an interpretation. A pretty much easy thing to remember is if it's visible on the picture, if you can have a look at it, and if AI learned it before, then probably you'll be able to recognize the pattern. If it's not visible on the image, then probably the AI won't see it. It's not because it's not intelligent, it's just because it's not able to recognize. Why AI is doing it outperforming human performance is that with the simple image that we're going to have a look at, we'll probably will have a look at the damage because we have our own intelligence with a lot of layers looking at it. But AI at the same time can have a look at all different types of colors, can do a lot of different treatments at the same time, and can mix treatments, which we cannot do at the same time. So this is why AI is acting very quickly.